Welcome to the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences new curriculum showcase, in which we're going to be discussing DD319, Environmental Policy in an International Context. Now, this is a Level 3 module that's launching this October, fondly known as EPIC, and indeed it is EPIC because it sets to explore the causes and consequences of environmental problems, why these problems are so difficult to resolve, and what our options are for the future. So I'm joined by Dave Humphreys and Petr Jehlicka to discuss some of this. Dave, environmental change, and in particular, I mean climate change, it's in the news all day. It's a really, really important and also ever so timely thing to be discussing right now.
Yes, it is. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is the world's foremost group of climate scientists, warned last year that we have just 12 years to turn this problem around of climate change, to get in place the new infrastructures to ensure the transition to a low carbon economy. That was last year. So in a sense, we've just got 11 years to sort of deal with this. Another warning that came out earlier this year was from an intergovernmental policy platform on biodiversity and ecosystem services, which warns that species extinction is accelerating. As David Attenborough is on record as saying that we're now living through the 6th great extinction of species. The 5th one was some 66 million years ago, which saw the extinction of the dinosaurs. We're now into the middle of the 6th one. So this module's coming out at a time when we're living on a warming planet and when we're starting to lose some of our biological diversity. So yes, it's a very, very timely module.
And of course, climate change is really closely linked to diet, human diet.
Yes, it is, because on the one hand, climate change is a threat to agriculture and to food security. At the same time, of course, agriculture itself is a source of greenhouse gases and therefore a cause of climate change, especially animal farming, cattle and sheep farming. And also animal farming is a source of deforestation, especially in the global south, because deforestation is happening because animal feed needs to be produced in the global south, and also meat to satisfy affluent diet based on meat and dairy products in the global north. So as a result, there is a loss of carbon sink through deforestation. So the main problem here is the affluent diet based on dairy products and meat in the global north, which is spreading throughout the rest of the world at the moment. So this is a relatively well-known problem. Another problem is, which is less often discussed, is the increase in consumption of beverages like coffee, wine and beer, for example, and also soft drinks, which also have environmental effects. And for example, in a country like the UK or other West European countries, the consumption of beer or wine has increased 5 to 8-fold since the Second World War. And this has huge repercussions in terms of land requirements, because all these plants from which ingredients for these beverages are sourced need to be grown somewhere. And of course, this land could be used for other purposes, including, for example, nature conservation.
So this brings up a lot of issues, and Dave, you were mentioning some of the sorts of warnings and things, and I see you brought a newspaper along. Yes. I mean, the media is very prolific in the way that they're presenting a lot of this. We've been talking today as well about understanding evidence for certain things and questioning critically things that are in the news. But what are the media saying, and how important is that story?
Different sections of the media say different things, really. There's still, with respect to climate change, there's still quite an active denial lobby that asserts that the problem isn't happening. The problem is happening. The scientific evidence is pretty unambiguous on this. Well, you mentioned the newspaper article. I mean, this is from The Guardian last week, and it's from an article by Joseph Stiglitz, who's a Nobel Prize-winning economist, and he's warned that the climate crisis is our war. It demands the same mobilisation. So he's an economist. He's arguing that we need to retool the economy and to ensure the transition to a low-carbon economy. He talks about a Green New Deal, which plays on the idea of Roosevelt's New Deal in 1930s America, when there was a huge investment from the public sector to lift the United States economy out of recession, out of the Great Depression. And the idea of a Green New Deal argues that we need a similar public stimulus, an increase in public expenditure to get us out of this. So his warning, where he talks about this climate crisis as our world war, the countries that took part in the World War, irrespective of what side they were on, saw it very much as a fight for survival. And the economy, politics, society, culture mobilised behind this effort to attempt to win the war. He's arguing we need a similar sort of mobilisation effort to get the economy behind this problem. So that's one of the warnings that comes from economists, but there's also the warnings that are coming from scientists as well. I've mentioned the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. You're talking about evidence, and you know, I think an important distinction here is the warnings that are given by climate scientists are very different to those of the denial community. Okay, there's different. What the scientists are saying is very much backed up by evidence. Okay, they've got global circulation models, they've got data sets, algorithms that say quite unambiguously climate change is happening, it's real, and it's going to get worse throughout the course of this century. The denial lobby, which is a very dangerous lobby, asserts for political reasons that it's not a problem. I wish that was so, because if it was so, we wouldn't need to worry as much about it. But the window of opportunity for dealing with this problem is narrowing, and that's one of the things we want to do on this module, is tool students up to think through their agency and what they can do as concerned citizens and family members, employees, to deal with this problem. It's going to be the defining public welfare problem of the 21st century. How well we deal with this problem will, to a large extent, write the history of the 21st century. Did we deal with this problem? Okay, or did we not? Did we sort of stand frozen like rabbits in the headlight, or did we manage just in time to retool the economy and get ourselves out of this situation, which has profound intergenerational consequences? You know, there's the generations of the future that will be picking up the costs for this in terms of the ecological costs and the environmental costs.
And the whole thing is that area of responsibility. What can we do on an individual, small group, large group, you know, level to actually change things? You've asked some questions for our audience at home. So let's see what you think. Global warming is not a problem happening due to natural processes, a serious problem caused by humans, unproven by inconclusive scientific evidence. It's difficult with some of these multiple choice questions that have various nuances and aspects to them, but you can only have one choice, so have a go at that. It's all anonymous. And also we'd ask you how you would describe global warming. So which word is most appropriate for you? It's a problem, catastrophe, hoax, emergency or issue. So let us know which of those items you think you most closely align with. Okay, so some key issues here, and I guess there's no real simple answer, but in terms of a theoretical module, how did you go about designing this, and what were the key things that you decided were important in addressing this?
Well, we structured the module on three course questions, three interlinked course questions. As you said in your introduction, Karen, what are the causes and consequences of environmental problems? Why are they so difficult to resolve? Why aren't existing policy responses dealing with the problem, or or at least not dealing with the problem as quickly and efficiently as we would like? And given this, third, what are our options for the future? What can be done for the future? What should be done for the future? So that's our intellectual framework, if you like, and that's sort of very much what drives the inquiry as the module evolves. And the module concludes by looking at some options that we can take in the future. What we want, this is a module that very much encourages students to, as I say, to think about what they can do. It's first and foremost, of course, about environmental policy, how environmental policy is made. But what we want students to take away from this is a sense of informed hope that they can do something to change this. So one of the theoretical hooks we've used in that respect is the agent structure debate, which is quite a long-running one in the social sciences. So should we look to change the behaviour of individuals as consumers, encourage people, for example, to switch to low-energy light bulbs or to buy sustainably managed timber? Should we look to individuals as agents, or should we look to change broader structures, broader systems? So if we're thinking of the energy sector, for example, do we try to encourage individuals to use less energy, or do we try to change the whole structure of the energy sector by shifting from fossil fuel intensive sector to a more low carbon sector? So that relationship between agency and structure runs pretty much throughout the module in different guises. So at the international level, for example, we look at the broad political structures of power and the role within that of individual states, of individual governments. Okay, because some states have more power than others. The United States or the European Union, which negotiates as a bloc in international environmental negotiations, has clearly got more power than some of the countries that lie on the periphery of the global economy in South America, for example. So in Block 2, on international environmental negotiations, we explore the different strategies that states might employ when negotiating with one another to try to reach international environmental agreements on climate change, on ozone and other issues as well.
Gosh. So, I mean, at level 3, we're using all these critical skills, and you've sort of spoken about the structure agency as one way of looking at some of those areas. Yeah. But you've also got module themes as well. So you're looking at various strengths and weaknesses of these 3 key questions through these module themes.
That's right, yeah. So, did you want to have a go?
Well, the themes are contention over values and knowledge, citizenship and responsibility, relationship between nature and society, and what is the 4th one?
Political, economic and environmental inequalities.
Inequalities, yes. We are using them as interrogative and integrative tool, in a way. And
so, for example, if you look at the themes are used to sort of prise open, if you like, to open up the course questions to different lines of inquiry. So if we take the first module question, for example, what are the causes and consequences of international environmental problems? If you look at that in terms of the theme that Petr mentioned, the interrelationship between nature and society, then the sort of things that will come to mind there will be with climate change, say, what are the natural processes that give rise to climate change? You know, the greenhouse effect, the melting of ice caps and so on. But what is the relationship between what nature does and what human society does? Okay, so you would then look to things like technological change, burning of fossil fuels, emission of greenhouse gases, and how this relationship between the natural and the social plays out. I mean, some would say that it's no longer a dichotomy that makes any sense. This relationship between the natural and the social, it's both intimately bound up with one another. They can no longer be meaningfully separated. If you look at that same question with the causes and consequences of environmental problems from the course theme on responsibility and citizenship, for example, then you would look at what might be your role in causing environmental problems, your consumption habits, the modes of transport you use, and what is your responsibility as a citizen to change behaviour. So different themes lead to different avenues to explore the module questions, and as Petr says, they're integratory. You can use these themes to sort of connect what might seem to be very different and discrete environmental problems, in fact, have got quite a few things in common. The theme of inequality, for example, brings to mind, for example, the inequalities between, say, big business corporations and local communities. I mean, clearly, a transnational corporation will have more power in determining how an environment is used a lot of the time than a local community. Inequalities between the global north and the global south, which Petr's mentioned when talking about deforestation in the Amazon. These are the sort of things that come to the fore. So this architecture, this course architecture between the course questions and the course themes is one that's meaningful, I think, in building up to this third question of what can be done for the future and what should be done.
Well, in terms of our responses to the questions, it's been a unanimous agreement that global warming is a serious problem caused by humans. So everyone's in agreement agreement there with you. And then in terms of the words most likely to describe global warming, problem and catastrophe are coming in highest, then emergency. Hoax and issue are not featured very highly by the audience at all, which is interesting. So I guess you've got people watching right now who are in agreement with you. And you've mentioned, Dave, how you've picked up some of these current issues that have been used to include in the module. But I wonder if we could return, Petr, to this idea about diet and food, because your research focuses on agriculture, and you've got this annual drive across Europe, this windscreen phenomenon. So how has that fed into the module?
Yes, well, my background, I think, feeds into our teaching in a number of ways, and you have mentioned one. Just my annual summer drive to Prague from Milton Keynes provides really important insights into agriculture, food and ecosystems. Because about 10 years ago, we did have to stop at least once, usually in Luxembourg or Germany, to clean the windscreen of remnants of insects. And in the last 5, 6, 7 years, we didn't really have to do that. There is no need for that anymore, which I think is a really significant phenomenon, because it shows us how agriculture affects ecology. Because according to research conducted in Germany over the last 30 years or so, more than 80% of the biomass of flying insects has disappeared. And that has really serious implications for agriculture, because insects are major pollinators. They also provide feed for birds and other animals. So it really affects the whole ecological web. And the reason for the disappearance is the use of chemicals, especially pesticides, insecticides in this case, in intensive agriculture. I was in Estonia a couple of weeks ago, and the story there is quite different. I was traveling by bus for 2 hours, and there was a lot of insects splattered on the windscreen. So clearly, because they use less intensive agriculture, lower use of pesticides in these areas, the biodiversity is thriving still there.
And so this international context is very important because it frames the various ways people are looking at things. You've got a brief video to show people. Yes. So let's take a look at that video and then you can explain why you selected it, Dave.
পরিবর্তনের কথা শুনেছেন কখনো?
এটা তো আমি শুনিনি।
পৃথিবীর সব দেশের কলকারখানার জন্য এই তাপমাত্রা বাড়ছে বা আবহাওয়ারও পরিবর্তন হচ্ছে। বিভিন্ন রকম সমস্যা বা গ্যাস এই সমস্ত ব্যবহারের জন্য এই সমস্যাগুলো হচ্ছে।
এটা কিভাবে হচ্ছে? এটা তো সারা বিশ্ব, মানে সারা সৌর জগৎটা তো দূষিত করছে। তা তো সেখানে আমাদের ওখান থেকে এখানে আসার কোনো ঘটনা না। আমার বিশ্বাস যে সারা সৌর জগৎটাকে মানে আর কি দূষিত করে ফেলছে, যার জন্য এখানে আসছে। এখন তাদের তো আমাদের এই যে ক্ষতি করছে, আমরা ক্ষুদ্র দেশ, আমাদের গরিব দেশ, তারা যে আমাদের এই ক্ষতি করছে, আমাদের ক্ষতিটা তাদের পূরণ করে দেওয়ার উচিত। আমার ক্ষুদ্র বিবেচনা, আমার উচিত মনে হয় যে তারা আমাদের এই ক্ষতিটা পূরণ করে দিক এবং তারা অবিলম্বে এইগুলো বন্ধ করুক।
The people living here don't benefit from the energy produced by burning fossil fuels.
So it's a really dynamic, fast-moving area, Dave. I mean, and so much is happening at the time, and you can see how you've selected content from the news in various places. How are you sort of keeping up to date with some of these important developments then, in terms of including them in the module and selecting them?
Okay, well, it is a fast-moving area, as you say, and one of the things we want to do is make sure that it's as topical and up-to-date as possible. So even since we started making this module, 2 major transnational activist movements have arisen, both within the last year, and that's the Schools for Climate Strikes movement by Greta Thunberg, the 15 at the time, now 16-year-old schoolgirl, who's organised what's become a global movement of school strikes. And the other is Extinction Rebellion, which effectively closed down central London about 2 months ago. So we've made sure that these 2 important transnational movements are in the course. I've already mentioned David Attenborough. He spoke at the International Monetary Fund earlier this year, and we've included an excerpt from his speech. We've mentioned earlier the Green New Deal that Joseph Stiglitz was talking about, and that'll feature in the final block of the module, which is very much about thinking outside the box. We want to not just have this to be a module about existing environmental policy, but to look very critically at options for the future. So we've got a very critical chapter on ecological economics and how instead of, for example, measuring economic growth and making that the main objective of economic policy, what would a theory of economics look like if we were to invert it and say, what are the most pressing public welfare problems of the 21st century, and what would be a theory of economics that would enable us to deal with that? So similarly, we've got a chapter on greening the state and greening citizenship. We bring in the idea of rights of nature, which at first, the first time you hear it, might sound somewhat counterintuitive, the idea that nature has rights and that we should broaden our notions of citizenship to recognise rights of nature. But two countries have recognised rights of nature, both in South America, that's Ecuador and Bolivia. So it's not such a sort of off-the-wall idea as it might seem. So that the final block is very much about opening up the debate and saying, you know, there's lots of ideas. We don't have to carry on the way we're going.
And Peter, to end, could I just very briefly ask you about some of the skills that students are going to develop on the module?
Well, the skills are developed through the assessment strategy, and we think this is a really exciting, innovative strategy which will equip students to be able to take part in deliberation political processes in a range of settings. We start in each block, there is a TMA at the end, which develops the skills developed in that block. We start in TMA 1, which develops comparative, contrasting and explanatory skills, and the subsequent blocks develop analytical, evaluative and synthetic skills. In most TMA, students have to write an essay, but on 3 occasions they have to do another task. One of them is to produce an annotated reference, which is an important skill which feeds into TMA's and end of module assessment as well. They have to take part in a collaborative forum where they have to collaborate as a group, and they have to produce a policy briefing report in TMA 3, which again is important for the concluding assessment at the end of the course, the end of module assessment, where they have to produce another policy briefing report on a specific issue. So, as David said before, the whole assessment strategy and skills which are integrated are aiming at equipping students with important skills for these challenges we are faced with.
And David, finally, what's the biggest gain students are going to have from studying this module?
I think they'll have an informed sense of how we've got into a situation like this where the warnings are getting increasingly harsher, but they'll also feel empowered to do something about it, to contribute to debates on this subject, and they'll have a richer sense of ideas, of the options that are available to us, and they'll also have, as Petr was just saying, through the completion of the EMA, they'll be able to write to different audiences, academic audiences, policy-relevant audiences. They'll be able to get their ideas over in an effort to grapple with what's a serious challenge, but which is not yet a hopeless one.
And very empowering as well.
Very empowering. This is a module with real world relevance, and we believe our students will get engaged with the issues and with the solutions.
Brilliant. Peter and David, thank you so much for filling us in. It sounds like a great module. All the best in presentation.
Thank you.
Well, that's all we've got time for today. So, HJ and Damon, how is everyone back at home?
Well, we've had a lot of good conversations today, and especially about this topic and this module as well, thinking about how it relates to our real-world lives, the practical examples and how we can see and apply it. And I think that's what we've loved today about looking at these social sciences modules, isn't it? It's all stuff that we can relate to and we can see, which is absolutely fantastic. So all the links for the modules that have been discussed today are on our website. Do check them out, and if there's anything that we didn't cover and you think of later, just email us, studenthub@open.ac.uk, and we'd love to get back in touch and see how we can help you.
And I hear we have an award for someone who's been watching since 10 a.m. this morning.
That's it. Caroline's been with us all day, so she gets an award for being our most dedicated viewer for today. She is a little ill today, so we do hope she gets better. But yeah, she's done well to stick with us.
Well, Caroline, we've got a bit more in store for you. If you fancy tuning in from 6 till 7 tonight, we've got George Kinder discussing with some colleagues from the economics department here in the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences about this very issue of climate change and what we can all do about that in his book, A New Age for Global Civilization. So you might be interested in joining us later for that. But there is plenty of other content about many other modules from the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences on the Student Hub Live YouTube channel, in addition to a lot of content about skills. So if you're bored over the summer, there's plenty to get involved with. Plus, we've got Student Hub Live workshops in Adobe Connect where you can brush up on some of your key skills over the summer months and also in preparation for module start. It's been a fantastic programme. I really hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you for sharing all your contributions. Thank you, HJ and Damon, for feeding all of the conversation into the studio and for being such fantastic hosts on our hot desk today. And thank you all at home for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. Good luck with your studies. Have an amazing summer if I don't see you before then. Bye for now, and thanks for watching.